Good evening and welcome to Artist Talk on Art on Monday, January 22nd, 2024. Thank you for joining us. I'm Miriam Deutsch, ATOA Programming Director. Founded in 1974, ATOA is the art world's longest running and preeminent forum. We are now in our 50th year, and soon you're going to hear lots more about our gala and auction in May. Our archive resides at the Archives of American Art of the Smithsonian, where it has surpassed 8,500 artists and 1,000 panels and dialogues. Also see Artist Talk on Art YouTube channel to view over 100 recent Zoom recordings. Comments made by our presenters do not necessarily reflect those of ATOA. Please join us on Monday, January 29th at 7 p.m. for a panel of artists as curators in nonprofit art spaces in New York and in New Jersey. Tonight, we're so proud to present the President's Panel featuring 4 of ATOA's past presidents. The panel will be moderated by Doug Shear. Doug is the only child of 2 painters who were WPA artists, Artists Union members, and Hans Hofmann students in New York City and Provincetown, and he grew up in New York's Greenwich Village. He was educated in New York City, including Rhodes School, where pop artist Jim Dine was his art teacher, and at Rhode Island School of Design. A painter, he was also a pioneering video artist who ran the Egg Store video facility in Tribeca in the 1970s and served fellow video artists including Nam June Paik, Charlotte Moorman, Twyla Tharp, Bill Viola, Merce Cunningham, Carolee Schneeman, and Yoko Ono. In 1974, Doug was a co-founder of Artist Talk on Art. He was board chairman and became chairman emeritus in 2019, and he currently serves as ATOA president. Doug is one of the leaders of ATOA who has served continuously for 50 years since its founding. It's now my pleasure to turn the program over to Doug.
Thank you very much. Tonight's panel does something a little different. It gathers together 4 of us who, I'm the current president, but it gathers together those who represent past presidents. This is not all of the past presidents, but it's a good cross-section of those who have been in that job. And it allows you to see Artist Talk on Art through the eyes of those who help to lead the organization. Obviously, our experiences and our memories will differ, so we may even disagree with each other a little bit along the way tonight. The founding in 1974 followed my meeting Bob Wiegand and his then wife Ingrid, who were both video artists, and Laurie Antonacci, who was a filmmaker, film writer, promotion writer, very interesting background in film, and was new to video at that point. They were all clients at the Egg Store during my tenure. And the Egg Store, as Miriam just said, was a hub of pioneering video artists working in New York. One thing we all had in common was, that is the 3 of us, was expertise in audio and video and knowledge of the contemporary art world. We were also aware of the previous talk series like Subject of the Artists, run by Robert Motherwell for maybe a year and a half, and the Artist Club, or sometimes just known as the Club, which featured many abstract expressionists. So Subject of the Artist ran for a year or so, the Club for about 15 years. That was basically from 1949 to 1964. In the 1970s, though, when we were getting the idea for Artist Talk on Art, there really were very few consistent talk series. There were some galleries that were artist-run galleries like AIR that did do periodically talks, but nothing that was as consistent as the club, which met at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. So the three of us were convinced that we needed to create one. Bob came up with the idea of calling Artist Talk on Art, calling it that name. We loved it right away, I think, as a name. And he liked it as running all the words together in a sort of European way, which is what we did, at least at the beginning. Unlike the club, however, the three of us knew that we would need a steering committee and tapped artist Bruce Barton, critic, author, and ex-club director Irving Sandler, critic Corinne Robbins, and art publisher Cynthia Navarrete as members of a steering committee. Also a bit different from the club, right away we embraced feminism. We embraced the idea of a broad diversity of presenters and what we called aesthetic pluralism. That is to say, we weren't wed to any one particular movement. We were dedicated to giving a voice and giving a face to many of the movements, all of the movements. And from that original steering committee, including the three of us, came the first panels, which began in January of 1975. Over the half century of ATOA, hundreds of people, mostly artists, not entirely, but mostly, have served as board members, officers, staff, program organizers, and on our advisory board, and many, many more have served as interns or volunteers. Those of us speaking tonight are just a few who have contributed largely through their volunteerism to what ATOA has achieved. So not just the presidents, but everybody that pitched in the many years. And of course, we would be nothing without the voices and images of thousands of artists. As of this past year, we topped off the existing archive, which resides at Archives of American Art of the Smithsonian. And as Miriam was saying, there are now over 1,000 recordings there, which have featured over 8,500 artists, critics, historians, museum and gallery staff, and others. I would suggest that you save your comments or questions until the last part of the evening, which should last around 90 minutes. And now I'd like to introduce my fellow panelists, Lori Antonacci, Vernita Nemec, and Albert Dépas, by reading their brief bios. Lori Antonacci is a co-founder of Artist Talk on Art. She served on the ATOA board from 1974 to 1990, and again from 2001 to 2011, and has recently rejoined the board. She has a BA in visual art, film, and video from Bradley University. She served on the Artist Certification Committee Appeals Board of the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, and as an officer and board member of the Artist Housing Coalition, the Foundation for the Community of Artists, Artist Community Federal Credit Union, New York Women's Agenda, and Women's City Club of New York. She was also an adjunct academic advisor and instructor at the Gallatin School of Individualized Study of NYU, and did so for over 25 years. She began her career in New York City as a video producer and documentary filmmaker, and is now an independent marketing and development consultant whose clients have included American Express, Scientific American, University Magazine Network, the United Nations, Canon USA, Toshiba, Zeiss International, the South Orange Performing Arts Center, 1M1B Foundation, and the Spark Fund. She also serves as Development Director of Heights and Hills, Fundraising and Events Executive for Live On New York, a Director of Marketing and Events for Chief Executive Group, Sales Development Specialist for Forbes, and Promotion Director for Crane's New York Business. I should say has served as. Vernita Nemec served as Director of Artist Talk on Art, interviewing art world luminaries and creating evenings of artists presenting 5-minute performances. In 2001, she became and still is Director of the Viridian Artists Gallery in Chelsea. Nemec has independently curated exhibits since 1994, first at Henry Street Settlement Arts Center. She has continued to independently curate extensive group exhibitions of art from recycled materials entitled Art from Detritus, for which she has received a Kaufman Foundation grant and a Puffin Foundation grant. Nemec also organized one of the first feminist exhibits in 1969, X12, and in 2022 co-curated an exhibit of New York City women artists from the 70s who are still making art, which was held at the Carter Burton Gallery in Chelsea. She completed her BFA cum laude at Ohio University, receiving an NDEA grant to finish her master's work at New York University. Since then, she has presented more than 30 solo exhibitions of her visual art and over 60 performance artworks, receiving grants from the Jerome Foundation, Artist Space, Franklin Furnace Fund for Performance Art, Movement Research at Judson, The Field, Artist Space, NEA, and others. Her visual and performance art has been presented in the US and internationally in Mexico, Hungary, Germany, Japan, Ireland, and France. She continues to write poetry, sometimes incorporating it into her visual and performance work. Her most recent art has been environmentally motivated, first creating art from junk mail, and currently sculptural works from plastic discards, which she will be presenting in a solo exhibit in February 2024. Albert Dépas. Albert is a Haitian-American visual artist, poet, and educator. Through the creative process, Dépas explores the notion of self, identity, and consciousness. In this search, he considers the individual self as well as different constructs of identity within our society. Dépas' artworks have been exhibited mostly in the US. His works also have been shown in Haiti, Canada, and in Europe. His artworks and poetry have been published in several publications. He's the author of Metamorphosis of Joy, a collection of poetry published in 1996 by Mega Press. He's also creator and founder of Fessings, a process of self-coaching that offers the opportunity to maximize one's potential. He holds a bachelor's degree in visual studies from the New School for Public Engagement in New York City, a master's in special education from CCNY, and a master's degree in international education from NYU. And now I would like to start by directing a few questions to Lori. And I should say that my questions will be pretty identical to each person, but I'm asking them to speak to those questions in the context of the period in which they were in leadership. So to Lori, what is your earliest experience of Artist Talk on Art, other than of course helping to conceive it, but beyond the original conception of ATOA, what were your earliest experiences with ATOA?
Well, one of the things that I wanted to say was what got me interested. I come out of not only visual art, but art history major. I had a triple major. But in my art history, we studied ancient cultures, and kind of just the stars of contemporary art. And when I moved to New York City, I ended up picking up a copy of The Artist's World by Fred McDermott. He published it in 1961. I got a used copy. That's right. And it exposed me to what had been going on in New York City in the art community. And that prompted me in terms of my discussions about why aren't we talking about art? Why isn't there a club? What's going on? So in the spring of and summer of 1974, both Doug and I visited Bob Wiegand and Ingrid, who were house sitting in the country. And that became the conversation between the three of them. So that was my entree into helping to create Artists Talk on Art. And one of the things that, ironically, we're doing bios and everything here, which I'm sure the audience wants to hear. One of the things we did with Artists Talk on Art was we refused to do that. We said your introduction is 5 minutes. You can show slides of your work. You can show a history of work. You can show the most recent work. But that's your introduction to the audience. You're an artist, your introduction is your art. We did that with everyone. There were no long bios, there were no published bios. Artists were artists.
And how long was your tenure altogether, and what were your different roles? Because you had different hats that you were.
I was the president, treasurer, and executive director. And I think it was all three of those until about 1989. Actually, I think I was executive director into 1985. And then there were a series of one-year executive directors until Vernita took over as president and executive director, 1989-90. And what's interesting, we started out, we had no funding. We had $200 from Pearl Paint. We had a list from, I think it was the Soho Artists Association.
Right.
And we just went and did it. We had a steering committee. Eventually, we created a board, and we applied for New York State Council and NEA grant. And we got turned down initially because I think it was New York State that required you have a full-time executive director for an organization before they'd give you a penny.
Right.
So the next grant we put in, I said I was the full-time executive director of Artists Talk on Art for $1 a year. And we got the grant. And that was, I think our first grant was actually 1979. So we existed 75, 76, 78 into 79 on our own steam.
So talking mainly about your original tenure, the early part of the organization, do you have any stories or any anecdotes, anything that you would want to share about working with particular artists, or organizing certain panels, anything from that early stage?
Yeah, one of the things that stands out was my experience with Louise Bourgeois, who was actually on one of our first panels. She was on the third panel we had. So she was on eroticism in art, which was in January of 1975. But anyway, for a number of years, she would come periodically. And she would come to the door with two tall, handsome young men in their 20s, side by side with her, walking in, and she'd try to go by without paying the whole big $1 a year. And I would catch her and I would say, Louise, it's $1. And she'd open up her hand and show 3 crumpled $1 bills and smile and hand them to me. So it was just her game to see if she could walk in free. But the $1 a year was one of the things we did, again, for equality. Didn't matter.
It was $1 a night, Lori, not $1 a year.
I'm sorry, $1 a night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that was part of the equality. It didn't matter if you were a famous artist or an unknown. Everybody paid $1 at the beginning.
But we tried to sneak in nevertheless.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Well,
The only people who-
you're leaving out one important fact about Louise, which is in those winter months when she would come, she was wearing an ankle-length mink coat.
Yes, true.
Okay. Um,
The only people who didn't pay were if you came in and said, I've just been laid off, I don't have any money, we would let someone in and they would be the cleanup person. They would sweep the floor and do the cleanup and be let in free.
Mhm.
So
So, ATOA has virtually always been about artists, but we had some quirky policies, didn't we, in the very beginning, such as not allowing critics, not allowing gallerists, it was only artists. When did that begin to moderate, do you think?
I think it was, we had debates about that because what the artists felt was that the galleries and the critics and the historians, everybody had more power than them. And it was Artist Talk on Art.
Mhm.
So actually, I think the first time we did anything that wasn't all artists was, I believe in 76, we had Ivan Karp. But what we did is we had him present himself.
Mhm.
It was like he was on display. He was one of the few gallery owners that artists felt comfortable and positive about. But he was the first one that appeared.
Mhm.
So
from that earliest stage, one of the things that we did was that after the panel, we would go to a local bar of some kind. And so part of the history of ATOA was where we went to eat and drink after the panels. Do you remember any of those early spots that we went?
Panellis, of course. Yeah, because some of the first places that we held the panel, which were all galleries who donated their space free, were near there.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because not only is Artist Talk on Art still around, but Finelli's is still around as well.
Right. Well, also it was the Broome Street Bar, and it was there were a couple of places. Maybe someone else will remember that. Okay, let's see what else. Yeah, in a more broad sense, having been involved in the beginning of ATOA, what is ATOA meant to you over all this time? You came back twice after a hiatus, and so including recently, you also were helpful when we were shopping the archive. And so obviously you must still feel a good deal of dedication to ATOA. How do you feel about ATOA?
Well, it's interesting because I probably would have stayed on the board, stayed president, stayed executive director, except those of us who were working together in community kind of let me know that maybe I should leave room for other people.
Uh-huh.
So that's why I actually scaled back at a certain point, was let's have other people have a chance to do those kinds of jobs, be visible, put their mark on Artist Talk on Art.
Right.
And then I came back, I think in 2001. I was on the advisory board the whole time, sat in on program committee meetings, did other things. But I came back at one point, I was asked to come back and do some more leadership. But it's been my connection to the art community. It's astonishing that it's been 50 years and it's been great.
So you haven't mentioned panels or dialogues that you personally did, and I know you did a number of them. One that I'm thinking of was Benny Andrews, for example.
Oh yeah, I did some early ones. I think in 79, I did Why Make Art in New York, which was an interesting panel. It included a number of artists and it included Martha Wilson as well. And then in 87, I did The Artist and the Shaman. And then I think it was in the 90s that I did I interviewed Benny Andrews.
Was he at NEA at that stage, or was he, or was that before?
He had left NEA at that stage. You know, Benny was on our board briefly,
I know
1988,
that.
89. Yeah.
So nothing to say about those experiences? I mean, working with particular people?
No, it's great. They were all great.
Okay, let's move on to Vernita. Thank you, Lori.
A jacket on.
Oh, okay.
I have a Canal Street loft and it's very cold in here.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Okay.
go to it, Doug.
All right. So, when did you first start getting involved with ATOA? It seems to me that it had something to do with the Whitney counterweight, correct?
You are exactly right, actually. But before that, I was one of those artists that snuck in. I confess.
Okay.
That was how I first met ATOA, because I think they were in Landmark. You guys were in Landmark Gallery.
Right, one of the
Broome
first
and-
places.
Yeah, and on Broome and Green. And I was relatively new to the art world. And in fact, I didn't realize that ATOA just began in 75, because I came to New York in like 65 to get my master's at NYU. And then I did the X12 show, which was kind of one of the first shows where we said, we are women artists and we're proud of it. And that was in 1969.
Mhm.
Um,
So, one reason that I think that the Whitney counterweight was interesting is it represented pushback against the established, the established museums and big galleries, didn't it?
yes, well, the reason that it was three of us, Barnaby, Rue, Bill Rabinovich, and myself. And what we noticed was that the Whitney counterweight, the Whitney biennial was
Right.
coming, the artists were all coming from about 5 galleries, 5 commercial galleries. That was all. So we said, wait a second, there are a lot more out there. And what we were able to do was to find galleries in Soho, about 5 of them. And we presented, I think, over 100 artists who were probably just as promising, if not more, than some of those Whitney biennial artists at the time.
And what year was the first counterweight?
I think it was 1978.
Okay.
And I think that was when we did our panel. We did a few more after that. We did some small ones that were just postcard shows. There were some internal politics going on. So one year I had to do a little 4x6 postcard show because the guys kind of took over and kind of try to sneak things through without my knowledge. So that was my rebellion, was to say, okay, anyone with a 4x6 postcard. And that was how I got to be very close to Nancy Spiro. And before Artist Talk on Art, I have to say that there were less organized meetings going on that had political overtones, like Artist Meeting for Cultural Change, Carl Andre and Leon Golub and Nancy Spiro and Lucy Lepard. But Artist Talk on Art was the first time where we were all honored. You didn't have to be a famous artist. You just had to come up with an idea of something you wanted to talk about and something you felt was important to talk about or something you were curious about.
So what are some of your memories from either panels that you personally organized and I should say, before we even go to that, before you became executive director and then ultimately also president, what was your original involvement other than doing, an occasional panel? Were you working in programming for a while? On the committee or?
Well, I was looking, I found, you'll be thrilled, Doug. I found a whole box full of flyers. And in 1989, when we were at Soho 20 Gallery,
Mhm.
I was the president, but Amy Ernst was the director.
Right.
And then in 1990, we had our Sweet 16 party,
Yeah.
which I thought was kind of a trippy thing to do. You know,
Uh-huh.
basically, I mean, what I'm remembering is our being in so many different places and constantly, you know, addressing the issues that artists needed to hear.
Mhm. So for yourself also, I know you did a number of interesting, well, you did a number of performance nights, including open performance calls,
Right.
but you also were an excellent interviewer, if I might say.
Well, thank you. And
Yeah.
actually, I am thrilled that the last year that I was the director, or before, I think I left as the director in 1998 when Donna took over.
Right.
And that same year, though, in February, I interviewed Rob Storr, and that was just such an incredible moment because
Uh-huh.
it looked like we were the best friends. You know, we were sharing a bottle of wine at the table, and you know, just I had done my work that time. You
Right.
know,
Well,
and
it was a very charming interview, that interview.
there were some that were less successful. I mean, Jerry Saltz, he took over. He wouldn't
Yeah.
let me say a word. And Peter Plagens, I don't know. It's like a vague memory. There were a lot of them that I tried to interview, and no one ever, you know, kind of blended with me as well as Rob Storr had. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
they were
Um,
all moments.
So, yeah, okay, I think let's move on to Albert.
Well, I just wanted to add one
Yeah,
other
go
thing
right, go right ahead.
that hasn't been brought up. In 1994, I started these workshops called Taking Care of Business that we did at Henry Street. And
Yeah.
it happened 2 years in a row.
Right.
And they were 2-day events. We charged $35 or $30. And I have those tapes for you, Doug.
Oh, good.
So that'll be a good thing. And then also in 96, we offered health insurance.
Right,
I don't know if people remember that, but it was hard for artists to get health insurance.
right.
And so
This was before the Affordable Care Act and so on.
well before.
Well before. Yeah.
And we worked with a really wonderful man by the name of Roy Assad, and he made it possible for artists to have their own health insurance policies. And that was when we were under the downtown Guggenheim, if anyone remembers. The
Yeah.
Guggenheim had a branch downtown at the Fulcrum Gallery, which was part of Terry Fugate Wilcox and
Right.
Valerie Shakespeare had a gallery there, and they were so wonderfully supportive of us.
Right.
Yeah.
They had nothing to do with the Guggenheim. They just happened to be.
Oh, no, exactly. They had just rented the space underneath.
So let's go to Albert, and then we'll be circling back to talk to, all of us will talk. Albert, what was your tenure as president? When did you become president? And do you remember the years involved for you?
I will give you my brief outline when I become president. But before I go into that, I just want to echo Vernita's panel with Rob Storr. I completely forget about it, of course, most of the panels, but when she brought it up, I remember that night was a beautiful, entertaining night after the panels that Rob Storr even put a flower behind his ears.
Yeah.
I recall that. So it was a wonderful night. Now, how did I start it and when did I start? I came upon Artist Talk or Not just by accident. I was just out of art school and I was working for Department of City Planning as a graphic artist. Back then, that's what we called them. Now we call them graphic designers. In the days before computer. to do it by hand, and I used to do architectural drawing for them. So one Friday evening, I left the office and I was walking through Soho to go home in the East Village. And I noticed some people, pulling chairs out, kind of arranging them in the gallery. And I was curious because most of them were closing at this time. And this gallery was making some type of preparation for an event. So I walk in and I ask question. Then someone explained to me what was going on about the night. And it takes place every Friday night at that time, and it's open to everyone.
Mhm.
And I said, okay, well, then I will come. They said, sure. We need volunteers. You can come, and help us out. So that's my entry into artist talk on art. I started as a volunteer, go earlier, putting the chairs out, making anything that need to be done to prepare for the evening. And after the panel, we'll help again, fold the chairs and put them back where they belong.
Mhm.
So I followed it constantly, every Friday night until I get invited to the programming committee,
Uh-huh.
where I noticed that's where everything happened. It was open to everyone, as Vernita mentioned. And one difference that I perceived there that I did not know of, that's what Lori mentioned earlier, it was strictly for artists. But in my days when I started, it was for anyone in the arts,
Uh-huh.
any subject in the arts. It was open to that. And I said, wow, that's good. And again, as Vernita mentioned, it didn't matter who you were. You can come and present your panel. And that caught my attention.
Mhm.
I was equal just like anyone else. And we spent probably a good 2-3 hours going to different panels, selection, and then after that, of course, it goes to the board. So
Mhm.
from there, I become a board member.
Mhm.
And all along too, I was doing some panels. And then after I become a board member, then I become president of the board.
Mhm.
So from 1986 to about 2001, I
Mhm.
was actively involved from volunteer to become president of the board. And along the way, I presented several panels.
Right. So before I sort of open it up and go to, addressing things to all of you and a little more free form, it would be good to mention that there were a number of long-serving presidents or executive directors. So after Vernita, Donna Marxer was a fairly long-serving executive director. After you, Albert, I believe that George Rada was the next president of ATOA. Pretty sure of that.
Yeah, for about 2 years, I believe.
And then after George, it would have been Lynn Mayacole, correct? As far as you know?
That I don't know for sure, but Lynn got very involved.
And she served for quite a long time. And then it was Barry Kostrinsky for about 3 years, and then I took over after Barry left. And so the other thing I would say is speak to my own experience as chairman over the long haul, to say that one of the unique things about Artist Talk on Art has always been the blend of the famous and the unknown. And often, and I think my colleagues would bear me out, often on the same panel. I mean, you could have a famous name, you know, it doesn't matter which famous, well, Alice Neal on a panel with people that you wouldn't recognize today. But there was a certain kind of democracy to it that said that if you shared interest in either a certain genre or a certain movement or a certain theme of some kind, you could cohabitate a panel and not be overwhelmed by someone sitting next to you that might have been rather famous. And so I think that was a very unique thing about ATOA all the way through. But we've had our share of famous people, and I would mention Alice Neal. I had the unique experience of picking Alice Neal up from her Upper West Side apartment studio on 2 occasions, mainly because I think I was one of the few in leadership that had a car at the time. And so I went up and fetched her twice, and I got to see the inside of her place and speak to her and, you know, spend time with her, taking her downtown, taking her back up again. And seeing the bare bulbs in the ceiling, the white walls, hundreds and hundreds of relatively small paintings leaning up one against the other in every hallway, in every room, a few easels, and just the persona of Alice Neal still makes an imprint on me. Another of my favorites was Will Barnett, who was very generous in giving us art for various auctions that we did. And part of the pleasure of that, in addition to his generosity, was going up and having tea with him in his penthouse apartment above the National Arts Club, which was a mass of his art, particularly a lot of prints. So Will Barnett, who became an almost centenarian. And of course, Larry Rivers, Robert De Niro Sr., Christo and Jean-Claude on a number of occasions, and thousands of others, whether they were, you know, the great art teachers of their period, some of the outrageous in the art world, and a lot of very interesting people. Let's go to a broad. Oh, and the other thing I want to say though is, at some point in the not too distant future, we will get the history of all the leadership straightened out for once and for all and publish it.
No, because Albert and I both thought we were president at the same time.
Right.
Could have been.
Well, one of my favorite things about you, Vernita, is that when during your tenure and even a little bit after your tenure in what you did, if I would meet someone at a party or, you know, in some social occasion, and they would say, you know, what do you do in the art world? And I would say, well, I've been leading Artist Talk on Art, and they say, oh, Artist Talk on Art. Oh, you mean Vernita? Okay. And I would say, yeah, yes, that's true. Okay.
I
So
remember having the conversation with Vernita
Yeah.
when I was kind of recruiting her as executive director.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know if you remember this, Vernita, but you were not enthusiastic at the beginning. It was like, I don't know for sure, etc. And I said, well, you realize if you're on Artist Talk on Art, you get to call any artist, any art community person, anywhere. You have a rationale, you have a organization at your name, you can do anything you want with it.
And that turned me on.
Yep, you immediately got it.
Right.
It's true. It's true. And you know, the other thing about Artist Talk on Art for artists, I think in general, it was Friday night, you know, it was like you had something to do. It was like almost like a party. You had a place to go on Friday night. And afterwards you could go, you know, to Finelli's. I think during a lot of my tenure, we would go to a place on West Broadway called 211 down below Canal Street, this beautiful, elegant bar. And Jan and I had our favorite waitress there who was French, you know. Anyways.
You're leaving out smokestacks,
Oh, and Smokestacks Lightning.
right?
Really?
Puffy's Tavern.
Well, no, Puffy's was dangerous. You didn't go to Puffy's.
Well, I mean, you know, when we were at Soho Photo.
Okay, maybe so, but it
No,
was
which is
basically a
White Street.
dangerous place.
Um,
I mean, I had friends get knifed coming out of there.
Mhm.
Anyways,
Right,
But one of
and
the things that
Magoo's, yeah.
Magoo's.
one of the things that permeates Artist Talk on Art through all the permutations of it, all these years, is, you know, is the fact of how many, it just totally open to all types of art.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I mean, it started with visual art, with sculpture and painting and drawing and all of that and printmaking. But we had video art, we had photography, we had performance art.
Yeah.
We had, and the rule was with the programming committee, if someone, you know, came with an art idea and could put together at least 3 other artists who wanted to talk about it,
Right.
they got programmed. And
Yeah.
some panels were a little more interesting or cogent than others. But it really was, and still is, a very egalitarian type of organization.
Right.
Exactly.
I would agree
So-
with that very much so, and that's what really attracted me, you know, when I entered into the programming committee, anything and everything. And you simply needed to have the idea, and others will say, oh, I know someone, I know someone, I know someone, until we get the panel formulate around that idea.
Right.
I think it was a way we were able to develop a lot of artist friendships too, because you could like give something to your artist friends by
Mhm.
giving them that moment.
Do you
Right.
also recall that at the beginning of each panel, we would give artists the opportunity to announce the exhibition?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
That was a very good help for artists.
Right. So I was going to say that, you know, the root, one of the things that I think has been important about Artist Talk on Art, in the past at least, is that we were connected to a historical trend. There were artists that were fleeing Europe in the 1930s and into the war years and coming to New York, mainly to Greenwich Village. And they would first go to the Waldorf Cafeteria, which was on 6th Avenue, just below A Street. And then they'd be walking back and forth on A Street, and you would see famous European artists, you know, mingling with New York abstract expressionists. Everybody and anybody was basically going back and forth across A Street. And then the Cedar Bar came into being, the Artist Club came into being, and we have carried that torch forward over half a century.
Yeah.
According to Archives of American Art, our collection, which is now over 1,000 recordings, is the largest collection, the largest single collection in their custody, even large of audio and video, even larger than their own oral history recordings, which are, you know, quite a few. The other thing that Liza Kerwin once said to me, she is the now director emerita of archives. She said that, you know, after she got to really know the collection after having taken it in, she said that one of the unique things about ATOA, about the programming of ATOA, is that one week you would have graffiti artists. And the next week you would have 3 professors of philosophy from NYU. And maybe a week after that might be a performance night. And a week after that would be, you know, something else. And it was just sort of an endless potpourri of different subject matter in the arts.
I would love it if we would,
Yeah.
Doug, if you would mention Flash, because he played such an
I was
important
just
part in
about to
it.
do that.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So in the context of the creation of the archive, one of our former board members who passed during the pandemic, Flashlight, whose real name was Robert Daneman, he wasn't with us from the very beginning, but he came at a period where we were sort of struggling with the audio recording. He brought more professionalism to it, more consistency, and then through his help was greatly influential in our switching to regular video recording. And he stayed in that role even while we were at the School of Visual Arts for several years,
Yeah.
where they had a whole crew and a whole control room and so forth. Around that point, he stopped doing things, but he really carried that for a long period. He also was the first person that created our website. We owe a lot to him, and I still miss him.
You know, he and I did a thing called the Church of Art.
Uh-huh.
We did a panel at ATOA with it, and we invited Arthur Danto. And Arthur left about halfway through because I was doing a communion for the artists with Gatorade in red, yellow, and blue. And I think that was the point where Arthur left.
Okay.
But we had fun.
Yeah.
Well, one of the unique things, again, about Artist Talk on Art was that Doug and Bob Wiegand and I all not only had visual art background, history background, we also had a film, video, and audio. And we'd worked not only in the art community, but in the business community. So literally from day one, we were audio taping.
Right.
And we were having everybody sign
Right.
a release form.
Right.
So that we could archive everything in the end. And that continued all the way through Flash, et cetera, and everybody else doing first audio, then video, then digital, and really documenting everything.
Mm-hmm.
I can add that.
Go ahead.
that I was Flash's roommate with my first wife and still very good friend, Carla, when one night he got a gig that was paying and asked me to go down. It was underneath the Guggenheim to videotape that performance I was about to say, that panel talk. And I think that was what, 80s? No,
Yeah.
it must have been 70s. Must have been 70s, actually.
No, I think it was 80s.
Oh, yeah? Okay. And that was my first, that's where I first met you, and then eventually met Vernita through him. Yeah, he's my connection there. And how much he was committed to accomplishing what needed to be accomplished for you guys. That was more or less his full-time job at many points.
That's true.
One of the challenging things with the archive was getting someone to accept it. I think it was around 2014, Doug and I and several other people created an archive committee, created a presentation, and we'd been doing informal requests to organizations even before that. And what you'd find is that people would say, you pay us to take it. And we almost had the Guggenheim accepted.
Wow.
Yeah. There was a new director of library and archive there.
I think you shouldn't be mentioning names.
I'm not going to mention her name, who
Okay.
was gung-ho about doing it. And the legal department put so many steps in the middle of it that it couldn't happen. And that's when the Smithsonian finally stepped up. And that was just a wonderful opportunity.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
this is where our understanding of that differs a little bit, but I will say Because the Smithsonian was fairly early on, although I was the one that was initially contacting potential venues, potential places to place the archive. And Smithsonian Archives American Art was relatively early on, but we were still looking at other people. That's all. And
Well,
yeah,
and in the end, that's the most important, I think, really.
well, the most important thing is that it's turned out to be a very nice relationship, and we're very pleased with being involved with Smithsonian and in their stewardship of what is an important collection. And they've been just a joy, literally, to work with all the way along. So I would say that.
I have a question for you, Doug.
Mhm.
Just come to mind about collection. Does an artist talk on art have a collection of art also from auction?
That we have a small amount of things that are held over from past auctions. I mean, a very small amount. As you know, we're going to be doing an auction this year, this
Okay.
spring. I'm sure that those works will be put into that auction. Those are things that were given to us with no attachment.
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
But there's not very much there. I would say that mainly it's what we're going to put together for a new auction that's more important, I would say. And if you're listening or hearing this or seeing it on YouTube, please contact us. We would like some donated artwork. Whether it's your own artwork or whether it's out of your collection, we'd be very interesting to have it as part of your support for ATOA.
And I guess you'll get a tax deduction, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah. What else would I want to say?
Should we open it
Yeah,
up?
well, we'll open it up. I was just going to say that probably the most interesting and necessary twist has been the move to Zoom. So, that started really within about a month after the pandemic and the shutdown of everything and the difficulty in doing anything physical. Whereas up till that point, we had always done physical events downtown. It forced us kicking and screaming into digital. And we really haven't looked back. And what that has brought us, which I think is fascinating, is participation by people in other parts of the world and many other parts of the country, and viewership from other parts of the world. And so, that's been an exciting new direction for us, forced on us, I guess, but certainly it's turned out to be a good direction for us to take.
Already had someone offer a donation, by the way,
Oh, you mean tonight?
just now.
Oh, good. Okay.
So
Um,
it's a good cause, everybody.
right.
One of the things to bring up in relation to that is, at this point, Artist Talk on Art is not funded by NEA, New York State Council, or any other organization. We're completely self-funded, which is one of the reasons to do the auction,
Mhm.
so that we can create a Let's Go Forward fund.
Right. Yeah, so we will be having an event. Most likely it'll be on Monday, May 20th, 2024. You'll be hearing a lot more about that, and we're also going to be having an auction that will go up probably toward the middle of April, preceding and then overlapping the event slightly. Okay, so yeah, we could take some comments or questions from audience, from viewers.
Raise your hand if you want to talk.
Will the auction be over
Oh,
Zoom?
Amy wants to talk. I'm
Well,
sorry.
hang on. Amy, in a moment. Go ahead, Klaus.
Will the auction be on Zoom or at a physical location?
It's going to be digital, so it's not that it's going to be on Zoom. It's going to be an online on an auction platform. And right now, I would say it's most likely going to be Bid Square, which is a platform that has about 200,000 registered bidders. And of course, anyone that would like to also be a bidder will be able to register. It's very simple.
I'm happy to donate one piece of Isabella Jacob,
Oh, very nice.
my late wife.
Uh-huh. And a former board member.
Yes.
Amy,
Nice to see you, Klaus.
where is Amy? Oh, yes,
Down,
thank you.
down
Klaus.
below you.
Okay.
Turn on your mic, Amy.
Turn your mic on, Amy.
Lower left.
Lower left corner, maybe, of your
Well,
screen.
maybe Doug, you have to undo her.
Oh, okay.
Let me look for her.
Amy Ernst,
Or
Or-
Vanessa.
iPad 5.
iPad 5, that helps.
Right.
Okay.
I'm asking her to unmute herself. I think she might have to do it.
Okay, Amy, now you.
Maybe we should unmute everybody. How about that?
I have to ask. It's the permissions.
There she is.
There she goes. You're unmuted.
All right, Amy.
I'm on mute. Oh my gosh. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Nice to see
Oh
you.
my
Good to
gosh.
see you.
How are all of you? I miss you. I'm stuck here in Nokomis, Florida.
Where it's warm.
No, it's not.
No?
Well, it's warmer, but no, we but I've really missed ATOA and my Friday night date, and just very close to my heart with all the things that the lifetimes that we've all been through. And I'm so happy to be able to be a part of this Zoom, because I'm not very good at media at all. It's like if I touch a screen, I have no idea what I'm doing. But but anyway, I just wanted to say hello and thank you for doing this, on and on and on. I hope to be back in New York for the summer in June, and try to stay in touch with everybody before I have to get whisked off to Florida again.
Okay.
But with all the names of the people and the panels, it brings back so many memories of all the wonderful artists who have given so much to all of us, and anyway, that's all really I have to say. I don't know if anybody has questions for me.
Well, I thank you for your service as executive director back then.
That was very short.
Were you also on the board for a while?
I was,
Yeah.
and I was also on programming, and but as a director, I wasn't there that long. I must say, I really, I not being an educator and really not understanding how a directorship worked. I think, I did okay, but, I was much better at helping to organize and volunteering and just being a part of it. And,
Well, let's give
anyway,
you a little credit. Let's give you a little credit. You certainly know a lot about the art world.
Oh,
I have a question for you, Amy.
yes.
Was your father ever on a panel at ATOA?
No,
No.
my father died in 1984. Actually, that was one of the reasons why I came back to New York, because he passed away. And also I was going through a divorce. But I had been living in Bloomington, Indiana, and trying to get my master's in arts administration. And it was funny because I ran away from being an artist and didn't realize I was running towards it. And so, you know, I really consider ATOA, you know, my family, you know, and you helped me a great deal to grow. And even though I split off into other directions, you've always been a part of it. And the other day when someone told me about a architectural panel in Sarasota that was happening, and it was called 1010, and I said, oh my God, we used to do stuff like that, you know, 10 minutes, 10 slides, $10.
Right.
Yeah.
Only they were
Well,
$5.
I know
I'm
they were
in-
only $5 or something like that.
Right.
Where in Florida are you? Where in Florida?
I'm in a little town called Nokomis, which is part of Sarasota County on Casey Key. Albert's been there. It's a charming 1950s house.
I'm in a
Um,
solo show. It's in Sarasota.
Oh, at the Art
Spaces.
Center? Oh, at
At the
Spaces.
Spaces. February 2nd, it's opening, just letting you know.
Oh, and it's funny, I'll be in New York. I'm doing my doctor thing. So, and I'll be, but how long will it, are you in Sarasota?
I'm in St. Pete.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So
Uh,
you're a stone's throw.
Yeah. Reach
Um,
reach out. You have to give me the spelling of your name. It's not coming up on your thing, so I can't.
Ernst.
Ernst, like
Like Matt.
Oh,
Like
like
Matt.
like the
Ernst.
Ernst. Okay.
it,
Okay.
well, the one, I don't want to say the one and only because there are, you know, a lot.
other
There's an Amy Ernst who is a dancer, and we always would get our emails mixed up. But
Okay.
I'm easy to find.
Well, for me, you'll
and
be-
I'm in the phone book.
You'll always be the only Amy Ernst. I'm sorry.
But, no, it's fine. It's fine. It's
It's
all
up through
good.
March. It's up through March 16th.
Oh, okay. So
Post it
let
in
me-
the chat. Post it in the chat.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, post it. But, and I also don't understand chats. So
Oh,
let me just give you should I just give you my email address?
yeah.
Oh, but this is being recorded, so I
I
better
will,
not.
I
No,
will provide, I will
Yeah,
provide
Doug
your
will take
email
care of
address.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll put
yeah,
you two
Doug,
together.
please.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you. Thank you,
And
Doug.
anybody else, you know, I mean, I still, you know, I'm still in New York, my same place on Broadway, but I'm down here as a Floridian.
Mhm.
You know, but other than that, I'm the only Dem on the block, let alone probably.
Oh, that's
No,
terrible.
I know it is terrible. I have to keep my mouth shut with my neighbors, but they know. Anyway,
So one panel I remember that you did, Amy, that you put together, and we were at Soho Photo at the time, was Children of Artists, I think it was called, or
yeah,
something.
it was called Children of Artists, Where Are They Now? And that
Right.
was Andrew Bolotovsky, who played the flute.
Right. Wasn't it Musa
Oh.
Meyer? Musa Meyer?
Musa Mayer,
Musa Meyer.
and
De
I
Niro-
can't remember. I'm sorry?
Was De Niro?
No.
No, there was I can't remember. But there was another panel actually that my mother came,
Uh-huh.
and it was surrealism in New York,
Oh, yes.
Massachusetts.
Was
My-
Dallas on that panel, or she just attended?
No, she just came.
Oh,
She
okay.
just came,
Uh-huh.
you know, and that was at I don't remember exactly where it was.
Right.
It wasn't in Soho 20, I know that. And she's been gone now 12, 13 years now. So, but that's it, I
Okay,
guess.
that's good. I'm delighted to see you, Amy. Seriously.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Things have been, just a quick note, things are hopping and popping. I have a gallery that shows my work in Frankfurt, Germany, D Gallery. And so I have shows there, usually in the fall. And last year I was, not like 2 years ago, I was in Art Cologne, which I found out that Art Cologne was one of the first art fairs. And I can't remember who the gentleman, my mind is not.
And that was your grandmother's hometown, right? Sort of.
My father was born in Carolyn, and my grandfather was born in Brühl, where the Max Ernst Museum is, and which I have nothing to do with it other than visiting. And and there's a wonderful museum, the ARP Museum, that is in Bonn, in a 19th century train station where the train still goes there.
Oh, really? Wow.
So,
Does
but I've been spending.
Let's move on to a few other people.
Yes, that's okay. That's okay.
But
Thank you.
lovely
Thank
to
you
see
for.
you. Lovely to see you, and look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Jacqueline, any comments? You have to unmute yourself.
Everybody's mute again, so maybe it's
My
up.
only no, I have it. My only comment is this has been so fascinating. It was so great to although I've been part of ATOA for quite a long time, I didn't know all these details, and it was just absolutely wonderful to hear from each person and their recollections and, you know, the nitty gritty of the history. It's fantastic. And we just are trying to keep it going for another 50 years. So we need everybody to, you know, to participate. That's all. Thank you. And my husband was president for a brief time before he, you know, had to go elsewhere. But anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
And what is your position now, Jacqueline?
I'm sorry?
Secretary of the board.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Does anyone else have a question or a comment?
If no one has anything.
Oh, I see
let
Sharon
me
had
ask
her
the
head up.
question.
Okay, hang on. Sharon?
Turn your mic off.
But it's not.
There you go.
Go ahead.
Your mic is off again.
There. Okay. Hi, I'm Sharon Weapons, and I just wondered what's coming up next. What's happening now?
Well, you know, are you getting our information? You go to the website and you can certainly see the next few
Okay.
things. We have, I believe, Miriam, it's curators, is that right, next week?
Artists as curators in nonprofit spaces.
Right. And then the week after that is the photographer and painter, Neil Slavin, who was well known for a book in the 1970s called When Two or More Are Gathered Together, famous photography book, doing very interesting drawings and paintings. So that's the week after that. But you can see the upcoming things on the website.
Okay, great.
ATOANYC.org. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I think we may be running out of steam, unless anyone.
No, I have steam. I have steam.
Okay, go ahead, Albert.
Amy referred to something about Friday night date.
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
That's another aspect of artist talk on art.
Mhm.
It was practical for the artists because they got to learn something and make connection, and it was informative for them. And it was a social night for a lot of us artists.
Mhm.
We
True.
come, we meet people, we end up having dates with some of them, boyfriend, girlfriend, go out dancing. So it was a total night, Friday night, for
Uh-huh.
us to come to artist talk on that and engage. And as Vernita mentioned, you know, whether you're well known or not, it didn't matter. You know, I recall, you know, Christo and Jan, they did 2 panels
Mhm.
explaining how much difficulties they were having in doing the installation that they finally did in Central Park.
Mhm.
When
Oh, you're
Bloomberg
talking about Christo and Jean-Claude.
yeah,
Jean-
and Jean-Claude, yeah. You know, they went through details when they were doing things, you know, all over the world, and yet they were having difficulty doing something in Central Park right here. You know, they covered that, and Pat Pazlov did a wonderful panel also, was on the panel. I get to meet her and eventually, you know, interview her for the magazine. Like, it was wonderful.
So I have a different impression of Friday night. Of course, I love them. And you know, they used to say if it's Friday night, it's artist talk on art. But you know, the whole idea, the whole myth of connecting up with someone through artist talk on art. Flash and I, and prior to Flash, Bob and I, whoever was with me, I always say the reason I became chairman of Artist Talk on Art was I put out more chairs and then put them away more than any other individual. And that's how I became chairman.
Chairman.
But, you know, by the time I got to the bar, all the assignations were over. Lucky to catch the tail end of Flash and I would get there, and we were lucky to catch whoever was left. You know?
Well, you know, Doug, maybe you and Lori and whomever, maybe me, we should think about making them live again, because we really do miss that. And I think it's something that everyone needs, is a way of communicating in person.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, it's not immediately in the cards for us. I could say that, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, how else are we gonna get laid?
Well, I don't know. You have to plug in the right thing, I suppose, in the digital era.
Well, it's interesting too. You know, we're all talking about and thinking about generations, and you know, since all of us are the elders, how are the young relating to such kinds of activities these days?
Well, they're all about digital, aren't they? So, you know,
Don't they want to be live?
well, that's their interpretation of live.
Germs, viruses, no.
All right.
Right.
And don't forget, Vernita, that there are more of this thing going on right now.
Mhm.
Almost, you know, not almost, every gallery is having a talk with their exhibition.
That's true.
Universities have them all the time. I got the email, you know, from different universities, you know, having those talks, you know, galleries, museum, you know, it's become the norm for them.
I confess I'm doing them at Artist Talk on Art to try to get people out by having a closing reception and inviting the artists to talk about their work, and then hopefully getting a videographer so that we can put it up on YouTube. But it's all because we miss Artist Talk on Art and we're inspired by it.
I want to mention one thing,
Sure.
if I may. My wife Isabel, as we mentioned before, she was part of ATOA and for a while on the board, benefited greatly from a mentorship essentially from Donna Marxa, because Isabel never was in the business part of peddling her work to galleries or elsewhere. And Donna said, you really should go for a residency down in Florida. And it was a very productive time for her. And it put her on a whole subsequent sequence of residencies in the Wurlitzer Foundation in Taos and another one near Chicago. I wonder whether this kind of mentorship of artists that are less skilled in, bringing their products to market is something that's sort of cultivated within A2A as a continuous effort or not.
Well, I lost my video. There we go. One thing that we have done very consistently over the years and continue to do is subjects that I call the business of art. So they're on residencies, they're on self-promotion, they're on contracts, estates, trusts and estates, foundations. So we've done many subjects like that over the years. And they continue to be popular when we do them.
Yes.
Also about social media, for example.
No, I attended some of them and they were excellent, but it needs sort of the personal interaction sometimes, not just as an event, but someone really has to take someone by the hand and say, do this.
Well, maybe Doug, after the virtual A2As, you can say, let's meet at Finelli's after.
A big commute for me, but yeah, it's a good idea.
I know it's a bit of a trip, but
A little bit of a trip.
Well, it's an interesting conversation about possibly going live again. So it's a conversation to continue
yeah,
and
absolutely.
see what
Yeah.
possibilities may exist in this new year.
You should be pretty aware that Zoom is live. I think what you mean is physical.
Yes, in person. physical.
Right. Yeah. Instead of high distance, high touch.
And we are live. We are not virtual.
Well, tomorrow will be virtual though.
Crazy.
So
This has been great, Doug. Thank
yeah,
you.
I think it's been good. And I think that it's time for Miriam to come in and put us out of our misery.
As someone who's fairly new to ATOA, it's been fascinating to hear about the history and these anecdotes. So thanks very much to all the past presidents and these panelists. And thanks to everyone for joining us. I'd also like to thank Vanessa for heading the Zoom call and our programming assistant, Susanna and the board and numerous volunteers that help keep ATOA alive. So hope to see you again and good night.
Thank you.
Can I add one note? Can I add one note? I am going to be an ATOA talk on February, isn't it February 12th? Just
Oh, yeah.
with my show. Just wanted
Yeah.
to let Amy know I'll be on ATOA
Oh,
Zoom. Okay?
Yep.
Okay,